ただいまより
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Innovative City Forum, the session for art and creativity. I would now like to introduce the speakers for this session. Mayor of the 4th District of Paris, initiator of Nuit Blanche event, Mr. Christophe Girard. Assistant Professor of Thammasat Business School, Executive Director of the Future Innovative Thailand Institute, Ms. Karndee Leopairote. Head of Culture, the Mayor of London, Miss Justine Simons. And the moderator for the session will be Director of Mori Art Museum, Mr. Fumio Nanjo. So, Mr. Nanjo, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third day of the Innovative City Forum. We co-sponsored on the first day with the Japan Foundation a session which was focused on Asia. What's happening in Asia is what we discussed from the perspective of creative city and art. Diverse discussions took place. And yesterday, we had the keynote speech, two keynote speeches actually, widely contrasting by Mr. Joichito and Professor Apinan. In the afternoon, we had discussion with the theme of under the theme of innovation. In the field of science and technology, what is happening and how is that going to change the society? That is what we heard about. And then after that, inclusive of the ranking of the cities, how will cities change going forward was discussed. In terms of ranking, London came first this year as well. After the Olympic Games, London is surging ahead. Paris, New York, London, and Tokyo. The near future was discussed with regard to these cities, and experts discussed what will happen. Now, today again, we'll be going back to the subject of art and the city. And the morning session will see a discussion on designing the creative city. And from the standpoint of the organizer, how will cities develop in terms of art and design and creative industries? How do we combine these factors with the city, and how do we make cities creative and vibrant? This is a major theme. And so on these themes, we'd like to have discussions take place. Cities are actually changing. And you may think cities remain the same all the time, but they are changing at an incredible speed. And when technology develops even further, basic infrastructure, for example, energy distribution systems and transportation systems and energy and information, and this has already started, but all over the city there's Wi-Fi available, or it will be available. In Toranomon Hills, you have Wi-Fi across the entire building, and so that's a great difference from the past. And we're seeing changes in terms of art as well in the field of art. Let me do a little bit of advertisement. Minnie May, a Taiwanese artist's exhibition is going on at the Mori Art Museum. This is participatory art where the viewers participate, and she has been doing this all along. Nicolas Brio, a French art critic, talked about relational aesthetics, and that is the base of this. And Li Mingwei is emblematic of this trend. And on the other hand, the technology is having a major impact. Art is changing as a result of technology, and what was not possible in the past is now possible in the cities you see art spreading across the city, and that can be manufactured. And so from a broad perspective, we want to discuss city building and what is to become of cities. So we'd like to hear about this and then have a discussion. The first speaker is Mr. Christophe Girard, Mayor Christophe Girard. In 2001, he became deputy mayor of Paris. And then he was responsible for culture. If you could look into his to your handouts for his bio, he has been very active, and he is mayor of the 4th district of Paris now, and he is also involved in business. And he has deep connections with Japan. In the 70s, he lived in Japan, and so he speaks Japanese. And we wanted to have him lecture in Japanese, but basically he said he would be speaking in English. So first we'd like to have Mayor Girard. Nuit Blanche is very famous in Paris, and I have to mention this. Nuit Blanche is an art festival which lasts only one night, and he is responsible for starting this. In Kyoto, Nuit Blanche is taking place. In Tokyo, centered around Roppongi, there's a Roppongi Art Night which is going on. And so he's the originator of all of this. So the floor is yours, Mayor Girard.
Good morning.
I don't need this. Could I get this way? Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Mori Foundation and especially Mrs. Mori, who is attending this morning, Mori Yoshiko-san, who is a great friend of France and art, and whose husband was actually, before many people, involved in preserving, collecting, and helping and motivating artists, and also, of course, Nanjo Fumio-san, who has been wonderful in organizing and inviting us this morning. Yesterday, I had the chance to attend a few sessions and listen carefully to the speakers. And to be honest, what I heard helped me to change what I was planning to say this morning. This is why such forums, I think, help a lot people in charge. You could be an elected person, you could be in charge like my colleague in London, Justine, or Karndee in Bangkok, in Thailand, or in London, in charge of our policies. We need to listen, we need to meet, we need to exchange. And for these reasons, I believe I'm in Japan at a time where I call it Japanese Renaissance, at a time where Japanese people ask the right questions because of the situation, economically, politically, and I would say ecologically. After Fukushima, I think the world has changed. And I think that it's not only Japan that has changed. I think we have changed, and we must change. The key word I had chosen has been changing in the morning, at breakfast, and at night. But I remain stuck, I would say, to a word I love, which is in Japanese, daitansa, to dare. I don't believe the world can go forward and that policies can be good for public and for citizens if we don't dare and take risk. What are politicians? Who are they? Who are we? When you're elected, you represent the people and the citizens. And what do you expect actually from us. You expect that we are honest, that we work hard, but you expect that we think, sometimes twice, that we are competent, that we have a vision, and that we have action. I will give you a few examples of things I did and we did in Paris, in a city which has a long, long history of landmark and a very heavy heritage, which is almost a burden. You know, when we invite artists to come to Paris, often I realize that the beauty of the city is not something that makes it easy for them. On the opposite, it makes you shy. And so much beauty is not always very helpful. So a city like Paris, and cities like, of course, London, Berlin, all these big cities we all know and we all visit, you know, because of the landmark, museums, theaters, avenues, gardens, and food and restaurants, need to be revisited and need to be shuffled. In the north of Paris, you have an example here of a place which used to be the warehouse of coffins, caskets. That's where we had not the dead bodies, but that's where we had the basket, the coffins, by thousands. And the logic was, at the time, in the 90s, that such a building, which is a 19th century building, should be erased in favor of course, building, you know, offices or housing, apartment buildings. The decision we took at the time, when we were in the opposition, was to obtain for our Ministry of Culture that this building be kept. And once we were elected in 2001 and I became Vice Mayor for Culture, we organized to have this place as a great cultural center. So you could say, why another one in Paris? Paris has already many, many places for culture. But we did it because it was in a place in Paris where you have a very mixed population originating from Africa, from India, from South America, from many, many countries, and the population has a very high unemployment rate of 25%. When you wake up in the morning and you open your shutters, and if you look at what you see and it's ugly, I don't think you start your day the right way. When you open your windows in the morning and the first thing you see is a tree, a garden, or a beautiful building, you start your day right. Our friend from Bangkok, from the Ministry of Culture yesterday, made a beautiful presentation when he showed after the tsunami how art and our artists participated and changed life. It's not like a cherry on a cake. It's deeply a way to live and put beauty everywhere, change people's life. So this 104 place, 104 is the number of the street, 104, Zero Maru Yon. But we pronounce the name by letters to make sure that people won't call it by digits numbers, but we'll give it by a real name. The place has 3 theaters, a huge agora, a huge forum, where the young kids of the district come to do hip-hop, dance, singing, meeting. And there is no violence. Whenever you put places for art, places for practices, population, mostly those weak, without a job, get organized and know how to express themselves in a creative manner. Violence comes whenever you don't have a response to daily life. And this place has absolutely proved, and we don't have even heavy security. We have no security. The first measure we took was to have people who would be mediator, who would help explain how to keep the place clean, how to keep the place beautiful, and how to feel free. So you go there, and on Saturday and Sundays, you have thousands and thousands of people and families who actually, mix. It could be from Jewish origin, they could be from Muslim origin, they could be from whatever origin. People mix because they have a place to meet and to be comfortable and to be respected in the heart of the city. There was also what Mr. Nanjo mentioned, so that's another view actually of inside of the building. So you have artists to come and perform, and believe me, we always think that art is actually more for people who have high education, people who have money. This is not true. Don't think that human beings don't have the heart, don't have taste, don't have sensibility. Everyone has. And education is maybe the level that we need to make this sensibility quicker. Nuit Blanche. You heard this morning from Mr. Nanjo that I created this event. I created this event when I was elected next to our mayor, Mr. Delano, in 2001, because I had the belief that in a society where everything is so codified, organized, where we are in a world of rush, where we're supposed to connect more, and I believe if wires are connected, I'm not sure that human beings are more connected. Nuit Blanche is one night, and I really wanted to be just one night. We are so used to have things for long term, for a long period. I mean, there are no exhibitions that last more than one day. There are no museums where you can see just one painting. But I believe, which is what I do in my city hall, sometimes to have one sculpture and one painting. And I think it's a good way for people who want to discover art to know that small amount, small scale, in a global world can work. So Nuit Blanche was a way to trap citizens. Most citizens who live in a city, in cities especially, full of tourism and tourists and people who actually go through. And I'm not sure, that people who visit cities today actually see. They look, but I'm not sure they see what they look at. So Nuit Blanche was a way to give the keys to artists and to tell them in a selection of, I would say, unusual spots. It could be a railway station, it could be an office building, it could be a clinic, it could be a temple, a synagogue, a mosque, a church, a school, a swimming pool. Artists would take the space and they would actually show exclusively their work that night. So people would go, and there is actually a kind of skeleton and a program very organized. So my advice to any city who likes to do Nuit Blanche today, and about 50 cities in the world, 20 in France and 30 in the world do Nuit Blanche, like in Kyoto last weekend, that they have an artistic director. The danger for such events that they would become so popular that they would become a beer or sake festival, not an artistic festival. Artistic festival needs to have strict, strong artistic direction. Frustration is part of the process. We should be delivering art like we deliver food or goods or fashion items in shopping malls. Let's make sure that we don't become consumers and that we remain citizens. So Nuit Blanche was a way also to have people enter places like I mentioned churches, I mentioned mosques, places where usually prayers, people who have a religion go. And most of those buildings are actually part of our art. And actually we pay with our taxes the way to keep these buildings in good condition. So it's a national heritage. So why should we be kept away from discovering and sharing those beauties? But only artists, I believe, have the way to elevate our soul and to make sure that we'll be sharing together and questioning and thinking with art being demonstrated. I would like to say a word about my country and the city of Paris and Europe. I have the belief that we are going through a moral crisis. Europe needs to be, again, up. We have, I think, a political crisis in terms of, I would say, belief and confidence of citizens in their political personnel. I believe that a young generation, a new generation of elected people need to run our countries. Too many elected people stay for too long. And too many times do we have the same people coming back. No, a country that wants to go forward needs to have a new generation of elected people. So I believe it's time for us to get up. And Japan is a good example of this energy I've been seeing everywhere in the population. Now, I would like to say a word. So that's example, sorry, I go back, of cities and of different, posters for every year. It started in 2002, so it's been already 12 years. And every year it's a different director. Sometimes we keep the director for twice to make sure we'll have enough time to work on the long process. But it's also good that a new eye, a new sensibility will take the city and write the city the way they see it for the night. That I will mention after. I would like to say a word about the necessity of the artist and culture in society. In what I called a rushing society, a non-stop society like ours today, let's be careful of the artist. The artist should be put forward like the architect, like the engineer. Let's have creative process. Let's have those who dream and those who write the world for us first. The financial side, the marketing side of things should come after. Whenever you put marketing first, it doesn't always work. And creation, art, is not a good. It's a dream. It's about civilization. It's about being together. It's about being human beings. And it's about meaning. So many artists create slowly. We should be careful about this process. Every artist has a different pace, like engineers, like scientists, like someone who is a cook, a chef. Everyone has his own process, and we should respect the time needed by artists, by engineers, by inventors, to come up with their own ideas. And I think this is also good in new technologies. Yesterday, the presentation by young, I would say, startup managers with the presentation of Professor Ito was very interesting, because I realized that new technology, that your principle of BI, before internet and after internet, is a great chance. Because those young people, the way they presented what they were building and discovering was absolutely the same artistic, creative behavior than an artist. Some of them are quick, some of them are slow, but we should take into account this process always. And an artist, having his own rhythm, pace, can sometimes need an endless process and maybe never finish. This we are showing it's how in the public space the cities have been actually occupied by pieces of art. And for instance, we have built over the 10 past years in Paris a tramway, which is like a circle around the city. You know, Paris is a small city in scale. It's 105 square kilometers. I don't know in miles, but it's very small. When you compare to London or Berlin, Paris is 10 times smaller, with a population of 2.5 million people, which makes it very dense. That's why sometimes when you visit Paris, you're just disappointed the way people greet you. But that's because we live so tense together that we don't have always this relaxation we should have to welcome you. So I would like to present our apologies for that this morning. Art in the city, art in the public space can be great, but can be also a gimmick. If manifestations like Nuit Blanche, which is supposed to be delicate, which is supposed to be a way to make people wait and discover, not rush in a place just to catch everything. Let's make sure that whenever we occupy public space, we also know how to make the public space empty. There is a tendency today to use any space to show art. I have been fighting in my district and in Paris for years to make sure there would be some times in the year when there would be nothing. It's wonderful to walk on an empty space, on an empty square. It's wonderful to walk and sit and just look at nothing, because nothing can be very beautiful. Last night we had this eclipse in Tokyo. I mean, the night before. It was quite extraordinary. So let's also enjoy those natural things that happen in a city. We're very anguished, society, where we want to feel everything everywhere. No, let's make sure that we have those empty spaces also. Because empty spaces also make more beautiful and extraordinary whatever we put in the public space. I would like to make to compare in a political way the art process. Whenever a parliament, a country, in a progressive country, decide to make a new law, and I'm going to take the example of the same-sex marriage law, I think it takes as much time for progressive laws than it took time for Michelangelo to paint the Chapel 16 ceiling. So the art process is as slow and long as progressive thinking. And I was happy to have the same-sex marriage law to be taken as an example in our countries. So, my friends, more global we live in what I call an exciting but rushing society, world where millions of new connections are made. Are we sure that we get connected? The warriors are connected. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody goes to the museum, make a picture. But are we sure that when those hands hand the cell phone, the iPad, the iPhone, over the painting, over the beautiful piece of art, that we actually look? I'm not sure. And let's watch also and be careful about our democracies where 50% of the population is becoming over 60. Are we sure that in our policies of public space and political, cultural policies, we are taking care enough of this new generation, I would call it, of elderly? They need to have a place. They need to be part of internet. They need to be part of the public space. And I think we should be extremely careful in this no borders world. For those reasons, more than ever, that we need, I believe, new multi-creative expressions. But at the same time, let's be careful about the way we renovate and we keep the beautiful messages of the past. This is an example. This building re-became a movie theater. Paris is one of the cities that has the most numbers of screens. We have more screens than days in the year because Paris counts 373 screens of movie theaters in the city. This place is the only example of neo-Egyptian architecture in Paris. So we decided to buy it from a private investor who owned the building because we wanted the building to be kept. But not only we wanted the building to be kept, we wanted the building to live. The danger of landmark is to keep the beauty, but without life inside and behind. So it became again a movie theater. And believe me, it's in part of Paris, which is also very popular, where there were no theaters and no movies, and the population, the local population, has been very happy to be actually now with a new theater and a new movie theater they can use and actually go to. For those who believe, and I'm sure you hear this every day, whatever your responsibilities in life, you could be a manager, you could be a doctor, you could be a secretary, you could be anything in life, you will hear that culture costs a lot of money. But those who will tell you that culture costs a lot of money, artists cost a lot of money, tell them to try ignorance. The price of ignorance is much higher. And I believe this is something we should be keeping saying. Whenever you invest on culture, you make good and you make society. I think I will soon finish my presentation. This is details of the Luxor Theatre I was presenting to you. This is a new garden, and I will say a word if I'm some minutes left, which is next to my city hall. Let's also be precise about local implication of city halls. For example, my city hall is a place where I have artists to be exhibited. I have an exhibition hall, which I made. I have been using the big halls for orchestras to rehearsal. So believe me, whenever citizens come, either because they need to apply for identification or there is a court, they have to attend a session, or they need any paper or meeting anyone for schools, they come and they hear the cello or the piano rehearsing, and it makes good. Also, I think we should be extremely involved and careful about the way schools and kids and students are involved in the public affairs. So I have made up a council of kids that actually meet every month in my city hall, and they run the affairs of the city hall for one day. And sometimes they have the possibility to make their planning for a week, what they want, what they wish to have, and how they wish, for instance, the district to be cleaned. They become responsible. Education is more than ever in the global world something absolutely necessary. And we local mayors have a responsibility to open our doors for education and for art. We have the spaces, we have the energy, and there's so many artists actually who are willing, who are wishing to be accepted, to be welcome, to show their work. And those young generation, believe me, despite the fact they're excellent on internet, they're also very good at looking at art and meeting and discussing with artists whenever they have the possibility. I would like, so that's a new garden we just opened. And this building you see in the back is actually, could be the office of Justine in Paris, because that's where the director of cultural affairs is in Paris, just behind my city hall. This is also an example of a space which was empty and where citizens wanted a garden and others wanted nothing and others wanted another thing. So that's where a mayor has to make the decision. So I decided for a few months, from May to September, to have a playground, a short-lived playing field in front of a building which is an office for architecture. And believe me, kids came from all over Paris, especially in summer for those kids who don't go on holidays. 104 again. I don't see the picture of the young Girard in Tokyo. You think it's coming? No. Because there was a little funny thing to show you. Yes, it's up there. How do I press it? Like this? So you see up on the left, this is me. In 76, when I came to Japan, so it says Shukan Posto, which is a fashion magazine, and the slogan is Orewa Ore, which is me, which is a strong masculine macho way of saying I am who I am. And the reason why we show this picture is because when I came to Japan in 76, I was young, I was 19, and I was a student. And to pay my studies and to be able to live in this wonderful city and become a Japanese by heart, I had to work. So I was doing advertising. So I encourage any student you would know would come to Japan to do this. It pays very well. So let's turn this up. Okay. I would like to finish this presentation by saying again a few words about the necessity and to have artistic art culture being the priority of our civilization. In a world today where media like to show first violence, ugliness, emotions, and a bit of what everybody has, which is sometimes to look at what's the most impressive and catastrophic, we need to have this smooth, long-term, slow-paced beauty being shared. It would be great to have news on CNN or ABC or whatever channel to start with art instead of starting with catastrophes, at least once a week. And I would like to invite the most progressive artists, engineers, architects, developers, investors, to be the first citizen to be always invited in our cities, because they will be the future and they will be our great hope. Thank you very much. Was I too short or too long?
Oh, it's okay.
Thank you very much, Mayor Girard. That was quite impressive, the picture of when you were young on the magazine Shukan Post. So you have been modeling to a great degree. Next, we have Assistant Professor of Thammasat Business School and Executive Director of the Future Innovative Thailand Institute, Professor Karndee Leopairote. She has been involved in government policies, as her CV shows. Creative industries is the perspective through which she has been providing advice on city building. So the floor is yours, Professor Leopairote.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karndee from Bangkok, and this is the second time I speak in this forum, the first one on the first day, but the story entirely different. We'd like to talk about how creative economy, concept, policy drive creative cities, as well as boosting the social innovations. So basically, we'd like to talk about what I have done in the past at the policy levels, as well as the activities that are going on right now at the city of Bangkok. let's start it out. As my practice in the researchers, this looks really statistic, or I try to put the flags into it just to look relaxing. I have done the research and tried to see the relationships between the growth of creative industries and the growth of GDP of each country itself. So what I found, we have strong relationship. The correlation is quite strong. So in a sense, if creative industries is growing, it will essentially boost up the GDP of the countries as well. So although Japan is right there, but nothing wrong about it because your GDP is already large, the growth of creative industry is somewhere right there. But your GDP are basically boosting or driving with, by another industries. If you look at the one on the reference line, you see that if anyone that stick on the reference line is likely to be driven by the creative industry. So we see the strong relationship right there. And that is more like a motivation that we need to look at more in details, the potential, the opportunity right there from the creative industries to boost up the economy of the nation. So, well, this is very statistics. Let's take a look at the other one, which I have been working closely with Dr. Apinan and many folks back home. So it's not, well, essentially we started out the idea of creative economy some times ago. It started to be very tangible. When people picked up the idea that creative economy is crucial for the future development. And eventually, we successfully incorporate the creative economy concept in our 11th National Economic and Social Development Plan, which is in place for 2012 to 2016. So basically, we started out, talking to people, how important it is, and how it actually relates to every walks of life, every professionals, every industries, not just only creative industries. We have large amount of agriculture sectors, manufacturing, and the service. We also once again point out the importance why you need to incorporate idea and creativities to create more values, and we are all in place. If we look at towards the back, we basically, the creative economy is not just a one-man show. We basically successfully, hands in hands, collaborating with numerous organizations, agencies. The one that I named up here, it's just the government agencies. So we basically have the private sectors, university, educations, and the citizen of the cities and the citizen of the countries. You named it, Ministry of Culture, TCDC, which is the organization of one of our speakers yesterday. And we have it as a local organization and local agencies as well. So pretty much everything. If you look at the economy, we basically, enormous amount of it was driven by SME. If you go back to Bangkok, you go back to Thailand now, you see a whole lot different. SME, the small entrepreneurs, used to be in a zone of cost-driven, factor-driven. Now they realize that they need to put more idea into it and create values, intangible value, but somehow create the tangible impact in their economy. We see a lot of change in the past years, and we're so proud of it. That was done in the past, but and these are once again that it's just a big, very rough brief of the creative policy that we have. We put it down as a national level, try to create the competitive identity, national, industry level, business level, and also the individual levels. This is what actually have been incorporated in our national development plan. That was done in the past several years, and I would like to talk about now in the future, and would like to spend just a little bit of time introducing the organization that I am practicing aside of Thammasat University that I teaching full-time. I work here as a director of Future Innovative Thailand Institute. Who are we? We are essentially a bunch of people who believes that policy should come from the citizen. Policy should drive from the bottom up as well as the top down. because we have seen the success case, the failure case, something that don't work when you have someone else right on the top saying what you should do. We got a lot of resistance, we got a lot of delay, and you know Thailand's politics, it never been long. You know, each government spent a couple of years, change to the next. Once the next comes in, they basically change the policy. So the policy is supposed to be strategic direction, long term, but it turned out that implementation could get quite fragmented and got the limitation by the life of that government itself. So the way we did is innovative in itself. We put the idea of, go through the Thailand 2020, not too far, not too short in the visions. We have, our idea, we actually, in Thai, it means that the future that we can choose, or basically we welcome the citizen to design your own future, to design the policy that you need, to design the infrastructure that you actually need. The process that we got to go through, we got to get concept of design thinking, systemic change, and what we believe, we're going to come up with a really cool and sustained social innovations. Throughout the process, we have policy design lab, and what we believe and what we want is inclusive and sustainable development. This is what we did. Gone through a lot of talks, forums, workshops. This gentleman is Dr. Surin Pisawan. He is a former of ASEAN Secretary General, and he is our chairman in our institute. So we try to do the Thailand Blueprint initiatives, and that's the big picture. Former Prime Minister, and we have experts from all around the world, from Helsinki, from London, from Paris, and from everywhere, lent in the idea of how we're going to change the country and change the cities. It takes time, but it has to start somewhere. We have a series of talks. We mix of people. Normally, when we talk about policy to change something in the cities or your country, it's likely from the small room of cabinets, yeah? But now we change the whole thing. We don't want to wait until any government comes in and take into a power. We basically believe that each citizen can be your own government. So we invite the mix of genders, mix of professions, mix of age, mix of career, and also every demography. Series of talks, series of workshops with the help of universities, educators, business sectors. And this is one of our event and forums. We actually held it in one of the leading shopping area, Siam Square. And it's pretty cool things about it. We have, all kinds of people, like a young gen, teenagers comes in. Do you see the quote sign right there? That what we try to say, that people should speak out what they want for the country, what they want for the cities. And it's quite fun, and it's really amazing to learn what they want and to learn what they need. Come up with the three. Through the series of talks, series of forums, we're meeting many of people. We come up with 3 groups of initiatives: innovative learning, sustainable economy, responsive government, through the idea of the policy design lab. It doesn't look like it relates to a creative city at the moment, but I would point out, believe it or not, when the citizens speak out about sustainable economy, many of them are actually would try to drive the city towards the creative cities. They don't know the term creative cities, but this is what I want, and I'm going to show you what they are. Innovative learning, because we still have the hiccups in our education, we believe that it could be better, it could be improved, and these are the idea from the citizen, and I would like to spend more time on this. Once it comes down to sustainable economy, we are not talking about boosting foreign direct investment. The citizen doesn't care about how many, the investment come from anywhere. They just want to have it in their own home, right there in community. Take a look at it. They like to build the urban creative district, sustainable agricultural estate. It sounds pretty awesome. Community web portal, just to help exchange the information. Green cooperative, public mass transit, urban region initiative, eco district, and urban green link. You see, this is not what we push from them. This is what they actually want. And it's just amazing that they are actually see the importance of this. You see the things that I highlighted in blue are actually what I'm gonna talk it further. Another one, we have resilience and self-sustained town. Dr. Apinan, Mr. Girard, my colleagues from Bangkok, I also talks about how we had innovation, which is likely to be the crisis-driven innovations, because we got a lot of some disasters. We got not a lot of it, but once it comes, you got to have change, adapt, and be prepared. Community Environmental Fund, they want to be able to manage their waste, garbage, and things like that, and have it as economic factors. Smart Street Biz, we're talking more about that. World-class service incubation center, small town tourism, community warehouse and logistics service. These are stuff that they want, and I just put in the group for them. Responsive government is one of the key, likely, to deal with, try to reduce down the negative impact or the possibility of corruptions and all that. And this part we have done so and have already proposed to the current government and the current business sectors. See, all this, to us, if we're going to put in one word, what we got from the citizen all around the country is more like a policy shopping list. A policy shopping list which have been well defined by the citizen themselves. Now, what they did, what we did basically, not me alone, but the whole group of people get together as a key stakeholders. What we did, we go around place to places, cities to cities, and try to talk to the local government, right in the village, in the community, in the tambon, in the provinces. And this is what we got. We got well received by the local government. And more like I said once again, it's a policy shopping list. We thought about for you, but the implementation has got to be customized. So we once again work through and through it with the workshop, many cities around the countries. You will be surprised, some cities right there in down south, the province down south, it's very creative and it's very active. So that's the Satun, the province right there that I feel most proud, how active of the local government themselves and how active of their citizens themselves. But I'd like to go right down in the detail, the city of Bangkok, and would like to talk about several specific projects that have been going on right now to make sure we have a good future. And some of the projects that are in current of the planning stage right now that we hope to build up productivity, competitiveness, creativity, livability for the city of Bangkok. This workshop was held right about this time last year. I believe it's about 13th of October, exactly this time last year. And what we have, once again, we draw in the idea, we talk to people. I started out talk the BMA, the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration. Something that I learned, something that we all know, Dr. Pinan mentioned yesterday, Bangkok has been voted as the best place to visit for so many years in a row, and we're so proud of it because tourists love us. Even though it's a beautiful chaos, it's just beautiful still. Bangkok moved forward and about to be the global metropolitan. And you can see this. Once we have any ranking, for example, that what we had yesterday, Bangkok is also one of the 4 days that you pick to evaluate, and I love that, love to read anything that you think about us. The question is that, are we in the livable place just yet? So now when you define the place to live or livable place, you can go on and on what it would be, the infrastructures, education, park, museum, on and all that. But if you ask a citizen of Bangkok itself to define the livable place, and I found a common definition, it's the place that you are willing to grow your family. It's not the best, it doesn't mean that it's a place where you can work and make money, but is the place is good enough for your family. And this family, of course, it means your parents, your grandparents, and your children along the line to the future. And these are their decision or the definition of the livable Bangkok. So we got that, and we talk about that, and we would like to do more on what we can do towards the future. Let me show you some statistics at the moment of the Bangkok cities. 5.6 million people officially registered as a citizen of Bangkok last year. Somehow we have some forecasts it's going to grow to 8 million in the next couple of years, but that's not the point. The point is we have 5.6 million registered as a Bangkokians, the official one, but we have actual population day to day more than 12 million. So the point is right here. When the central government allocate the budget, the key indicator that they can measure, which is the number of population itself. So they got the budget, as half as they needed to, because they would have to facilitate and build infrastructure for the 12 million people. But somehow they got the allocated resource for only 5.6. How would it be possible? So we see the limitations. We're not going to cry it out and say, oh no, we need more money to change things. But so we do it in a different way, as what we learned and inspired by many cities around the world, London, Paris, Boston, Tokyo, for example. We learned that the change in the city doesn't come from the government itself alone, exclusively. But we have to stir out to the citizen who lives right in that area, see the importance of the change, visualize what could be done in the living, in the cities, in the home. So this is what we actually did. We work closely with the Bangkok Metropolitan Administrations, and I would like to take example of the 4 projects that are going on right now. The first one is Urban Regeneration Initiative. I would like to introduce the Eco District right in Bangkok, the downtown of Bangkok. These figures are the help and the great help of the business sectors. Leading design school, leading design universities in Bangkok, Chulalongkorn University, I can't thank them enough. They say, this is a possibility that Bangkok looks like. We can change our metropolitans, crowded, traffic, this is the most notorious things about Bangkok. We can change it. We can do it. We look at the old town, the new town, and we see the possibility and potentials. If you look at Bangkok in the top view, the blue line right there represents Chao Phraya River, and this is the mainstream rivers in Bangkok, in the central part of the country. Chao Phraya River, if you have heard, I have heard it, is that Bangkok is Venice of the East. So I went to Venice a couple years back. It's nothing the same. We don't look alike. Venice still live in the river. They don't have cars, they don't have road in the Venice. But Bangkok has changed in the past perhaps 70 years or 100 years. We used to commute over the water, the rivers, but now people are actually built roads, cars becomes commodity or necessary things that everybody needs to have. We probably cannot get back to the point that we were before, but we can compromise the lifestyles of today and the possibility in the future. Let's take a look. You see the CBD district, you see the Thonburi district. Thonburi is, to me, is the old town. I have never been there. I have been living in CBD for pretty much my whole life. Thonburi is someplace that we have a whole lot of history right there, dated back 200 years ago, when we, and all that. We have started out the Bangkok. Thonburi was pretty much the starting point of our history, of the modern history here. What do we want about that? There were some questions yesterday and the day before. If we want to change things, do we have to demolish the old town to build the new things? Well, my answer is depends. To me, I don't want to demolish the whole Thonburi. It's pretty, it's charming the way it is. This is Klong Bang Luang. I've never been there. I've been there, but I never lived in that area. But if you read the history of Bangkok, this place is full of life. And this is the current photos that we have at the moment. But we don't want to change it. We don't want to change the lifestyle. You still have, the monk roll the boat in the morning, and it's beautiful like that. We don't want to have them to change the way of life. So we think, how are we going to compromise and be in between the really charming lifestyle that we had. This is the work of architecture. This is the work is about, is going to be the project in the futures. We said we can build it. We can have the people live the way it is, but in the more convenient way, better way, so that increase the quality of life. Klong Bang Lung, if I read the novel or literatures, they did back so many years, it reflected how people live and how people survive in the World War II. And that's, make me, the whole story like, oh, no, don't change them. They are pretty just the way they are. But just complement them, from what they have. This is another, just a common canals that we see. We used to commute over the water, but now it's not possible to go across that bar, stuff like that. But, well, because it's developed within all the industrialized, and the urban lifestyle. There are 3 minutes. Thank you. I'm sorry. That's shocking to me. And this is the Bangkok Renewables Innovation Workshop. This is all possible. They would like to be there. Well, the lifestyle is there, but just make it better. Let's go faster. Urban green links. You see, Bangkok is really hot weather. To me, before, Bangkok is not walkable. If you gotta go from point to point, I better take a cab, even only 100 meters along the road, because it's really sweaty, it's really hot out there. So it would be nice, we got inspired with Tokyo itself and Highline New York City, something that we can build, something we can do better. These are some of the projects that Bangkok government, as our Bangkok Administrative, or BMA, have implemented it. We have urban green links. We utilize the location or the place under the expressway or the high sky train. And this is one example that I really like. If you have been in Bangkok, if you are a Bangkokian, you probably not noticed that, how awesome it is. But if you look at the old photos, this one is actually underneath the sky train. But it's still hot to walk in the daytime. So we like to build a garden, and this is a grand example of the collaboration between the government themselves, the business along the way. And they believe that if they can make the city prettier, more walkable and livable, it's gonna bring in more investment and more economic values. And this has been one thing that I'm really proud of from shopping mall and the bank around the area. This example that I told you yesterday, we put the gimmicks, you don't want to walk, well, please don't drive, because we try to limit the number of cars in the cities. Why don't we put a little bit of gimmicks that this is the way that you walk, this is the calories that you burn. So could be a good gimmicks for that. Smart street biz. Informal economy. Believe it or not, if you go to Bangkok, you're going to see a lot of street vendors all around the places. And believe me or not, I look at the data, economic data, the economic value from the street vendors is basically as high as 40% of our country GDP. I cannot believe that. That's why we can't eliminate them entirely, so then we have to live with them. So we have to work around how we're going to compromise between the place, make it more nicely, and you can live both the vendors themselves and the consumers and the pedestrians all around. We'll try to connect our lifestyles and also the urban creative districts. We'd like to take a look real quick on this. When we talk about creative district, yes, we can refer to a creative industry, web developers, animations, and all that. But something that I like to see, the culture in there. This is the area of Nang Leung, the work of art for many organizations in our countries, and something that we'd like to keep it. What we did, well, we showed them what should be done. We helped them visualize it. But guess what? In this implementation, we have got to be careful. If you just, push your vision too much, too fast to the citizen, at the end, what you get is the resistance. Okay, I believe my time is up, but we can continue on in our discussion in our panel. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for taking such a comprehensive perspective to cover many factors, which are also discussed here in Japan as well. And she was able to visualize that graphically in charts. I wish that she could have talked more about the creative districts at the end of her speech, but I guess we can delegate that to a later time. So I'd like to go on to the next speaker, who is Ms. Justine Simons. Ms. Simons is the head of culture for the Mayor of London, and this Innovative City Forum, of course, cannot ignore the issue of the Olympics in 2020, and she was in charge of the culture program for the Olympics, the London Olympics. So she'll be talking from that perspective today, I believe. Also, when I look at her curriculum vitae, she covers fashion, film, commissions, designs, a whole array of different aspects of culture that she's involved in. Also, she's a public advocate because she has built the 4th Plinth Commission, and in the middle of London, on top of there were some locations where just the plinth or the base of sculptures are left in London in 18 locations. Apparently, she received many different nominations for proposals and placed the best sculpture on these plinth. So the sculptures which are placed on these plinth in 18 locations in London change from time to time. It's a very, very innovative, I think, endeavor. So, Ms. Justine Simons, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me here today. It's a great honor. I've been asked to talk about creative cities and to share with you some of the work we've been doing in London and also from other cities around the world. So the title of my speech is Chaos and Dreaming. Is this the future of creative cities? More than half the people on planet Earth live in cities, and the trend is for city populations to grow and grow. Cities are the energy centers of the world. They shape the future. They are full of spontaneity, of creativity, of risk and vitality. The poet Ben Okri describes them as the magic centers of the world's dreaming places, where the great music of humanity lives, the harmonization of different histories, cultures, geniuses, and dreams. But my question today is, are cities dying? Which might surprise you. As head of culture for the Mayor of London, I've spent the last 12 years working to build London's position as a world-class creative city. My role covers the breadth of culture: film, design, fashion, visual art, music, dance, and theatre. I'm also the chair of the World Cities Culture Forum, the biggest ever gathering of global cities focused on culture. There are 27 cities now, from Paris to Amsterdam, Shanghai to Bogota, New York to Sydney. These are all our members at our annual summit in Istanbul last year. And every member believes that culture is the essential ingredient in cities. In Brazil, World Cities members in Rio have revolutionized film culture by setting up cinemas in the favelas. They have massively boosted access to film for the city's poorer residents. World Cities colleagues in South Africa are looking to culture to heal post-apartheid divisions. This is the Soweto Theatre in Johannesburg. In Colombia, the city of Bogotá has chosen to champion the creativity of its citizens, and the mayor is commissioning graffiti all over the city, which is very progressive given that graffiti is often illegal in cities. In Argentina, the city of Buenos Aires has handed over a crime-ridden suburb to circus. The residents now see the best circus from around the world. Drug dealing has fallen, gangs have disappeared, and a new cafe culture has sprung to life. In Amsterdam, they recently celebrated a year of anniversaries. Major museum relaunches and 400 years of the iconic canal system. They ran a major cultural promotion which helped the residents to rediscover their own city as well as attract visitors. New York defines itself through its cultural quarters, from Greenwich Village in the 1950s and 1960s to Williamsburg in the new millennium. A powerful new example is the High Line, a disused railway line that has breathed life into a whole new area of Manhattan. And here in Japan, of course, I know you are all thinking about how creativity can play a major role as part of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So cities across the globe are increasingly positioning culture and creativity as a central part of their strategies. And in a globalized world, it's our culture that makes us distinctive. We might all drink from the same coffee chain, but it's our culture and creativity that sets us apart. I think the Olympic Games is a good example of this. When a city hosts an Olympic Games, the global spotlight is switched onto that city. Everyone is looking at you, and it's a chance to tell your story to the world. But what does the world see? This slide shows the Olympics in Atlanta and in Beijing and in Athens. What you'll notice from these pictures is that you can't tell the difference. You can't tell which city is which. So making your city stand out in this globalized world, I think, is critical. And my contention is that creativity and culture are the way to do this. But what kind of culture are we talking about? Many cities around the world are developing biennales and major museum franchises. And here's another controversial question for today. Are biennales the new Starbucks? We don't want all our cities to look alike. I love this quote. If everyone is thinking alike, then someone isn't thinking. But how does a city define its own story? I believe that authenticity is key. But how do you capture the authenticity of your city? The distinctive and unique story? I believe that artists hold one important key. Because artists, they see the things that we don't see. As the filmmaker Tim Burton, who next month has an exhibition at Mori, once said, "It's good as an artist to always remember to see things in a new, weird way." And the former president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, he once said, "If art is to nourish the roots of our culture, society must set the artist free to follow his vision, wherever it might take him." This is what we tried to do in London for the 2012 Olympic Games. We invited artists to dream. Hosting an Olympic Games is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for the athletes, for the public, and also for the artists. So we asked artists what would they like to do for this once-in-a-lifetime moment. And the results were very stunning. We invited the daredevil choreographer Elizabeth Streb from New York to use the whole of London as her canvas. She created extraordinary choreography for London's architecture. This is Elizabeth Streb walking down City Hall, my building. That's my desk. It made the front pages of the newspapers all around the world and helped us to try and tell the story of our city in a fresh way. It brought life to the city and animated it, and animated the landscape that was very familiar in a new way. This is the finale, where the dancers performed in the spokes of London's wheel. We also closed our major city centre, our major landmark, called Piccadilly Circus, and we put a real circus in it. It hadn't been closed since 1940. 1,500 tons of feathers were dropped like snow by angels from the sky. 250,000 people came. And it gave the city back to the people. It gave them the chance to play. We asked many artists to dream, and one artist made an exact replica of our important ancient monument, Stonehenge. And he turned it into a bouncy castle. That's me. 500,000 people have now bounced on this, and it continues now to tour the world as a very unusual Olympic legacy. One morning, the city woke to find our statues had new hats made by our leading hat makers, showcasing both our heritage and our contemporary culture and bringing a smile to people's faces. And the many citizens who didn't get a ticket for the Olympic Games got to be part of the biggest festival ever. This is a massive participation project for the citizens called the Big Dance. So London is a very successful creative city by any standards. It's vibrant and diverse. There are over 300 languages spoken in London every day, making it the most international city in the world. To give you a picture of this, the Tate Modern is the most visited contemporary art gallery on the planet, with over 5 million visitors a year. London has over 300 music venues. 32,000 people go to see a theatre show every night. The London Fashion Week is firmly positioned on the fashion calendar alongside Paris, Milan and New York. There are 30 film crews on the streets every day. And the creative industries generate 115 billion for the UK economy. The London Design Festival, again, is the biggest in the world. And in fact, there are over 200 festivals in London every year, which for a city with a population of about 8 million shows how central culture and creativity is. But it's easy to forget how important artists and creative people are to this story. Creative people form tribes and subcultures. They give cities oxygen and a genuine personality. And they shape our future and our identity. It's no accident that the punk subculture of the 1970s is the mainstream business of today. This is the renowned world-renowned design house, Alexander McQueen. So if change is driven by new ideas and vision, and speaking as a government bureaucrat myself, I believe government needs to put energy and resources into finding those great ideas. The ideas we can never imagine ourselves. We need artists. We need to listen to artists and creative people. But left alone, often cities do the opposite. In London, we're always facing many of these challenges. Many dilapidated parts of the city have been re-energized with artists taking cheap studio spaces. This has led to a growth in business, gentrification, and higher property prices. But this has pushed out the artists who played such an important role in bringing these places back to life. So now we're facing a crisis in London, and artists are unable to afford studio spaces. And because of the pressure on housing and development, London will lose 30% of its artist studios in the next decade. Cities can build big museums, but without artists and creative people, what would we put in them? We don't want a city where there are no artists and no creative people. Creative people give cities authenticity. But unfortunately, cities often extinguish creative talent. I'd like to tell you a story. On the streets of London every year, the mayor hosts a big busking competition for young people to play live music, and the best win a prize. This is our mayor launching the competition. But a few weeks ago, a shocking event occurred. The young winners of the mayor's competition were arrested by the police and thrown in jail. The police had arrested them under a very old government act from 1830. And this act prohibits things like kite flying and doorbell ringing, so it's very antiquated. So one of our challenges in London is to remove unhelpful regulations where they have the opposite effect to the ones we really want. This informal culture, a secret cinema in an old warehouse, buskers cheering you on your daily commute, skateboarders weaving in and out of urban architecture. This chaos is a vital ingredient in cities. The chaotic and creative things that happen in the cracks in between the pavements. The things that give the city its spontaneity and buzz. And these are all the reasons people like to live in cities. But can you plan for creativity? As cities, it's in our nature to want to make plans, but it doesn't always work out. I wanted to share another story with you. To celebrate the millennium in 2000, the UK government had the idea to build a spectacular dome to mark this historic moment. They decided it would celebrate everything we'd achieved as a nation and look forward to the future, which sounds like a very sensible idea. However, it didn't work out as was planned. This is the dome. Lots of government agencies got together, many committees were set up, lots of money was spent, but arguably the creative vision was not clear. It didn't have, as Christophe was saying, an artistic vision. The expectation was that many more visitors would come. And in fact, it became one of the most controversial public buildings in UK history. The Times newspaper ran the headline, "Attacking the Dome is Britain's favourite sport." So often, as Picasso once said, the chief enemy of creativity is sometimes good sense. But what if we turn this scenario upside down? If we forgot about good sense and focused on creativity, on dreaming? I love this quote by Albert Einstein. "Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will get you everywhere." Sometimes it pays to suspend logic and allow the imagination to take centre stage. One of our current big projects in London is called the Garden Bridge, dreamt up by the artist and designer Thomas Heatherwick. The Garden Bridge could in fact be a metaphor for city planning. The seed of an idea by an artist, nurtured and watered by the city so that it can quite literally grow. It's not a logical solution to get from one side of the river to the other, but a magical garden for the people and not the cars. And this is the Sultan's Elephant, the most ambitious outdoor project we've staged in London, and again, the dream of a French artist, Jean-Luc Cocotte. We closed the whole of central London for a magical story of an elephant and a little girl, turning London into a fairy tale for millions of people. This project happened shortly after London was bombed by terrorists. So for many people, it was the first time they had come back onto the streets. So it was a profound gift to the city, and it was part of our healing. So what could we do differently in cities to encourage the best ideas to flourish? And what are the ingredients for success? What do cities need to do if they want to thrive over the next century? If you ask city governments this question, they will usually say they need to boost the economy, increase their international position, improve education and health, solve housing, reduce crime, build communities, and provide a good quality of life. And whatever order this list comes in, quality of life is usually at the bottom. And quality of life is usually the box where culture and creativity sit. So it's very easy to see how culture drops off the list when the pressure is on. My contention is that culture is as important in cities as finance and trade, and it should therefore have equal status. In fact, culture is unique in that it can deliver all manner, a wide range of city priorities. So what's the real story of creativity and culture in cities? I read a study by Michigan State University, and they found that students who had been exposed to the arts were 8 times more likely to set up a successful business, leading the tutors to say, we'd better think about how we support artistic activity if we want to rebuild the US economy. So art makes you smart. The arts have helped criminals to change their worldview and rehabilitate. The Advisory Commission on Criminal Justice said, the prison system has achieved a shocking level of failure. The overwhelming evidence is that prisons create crime rather than prevent it. And this is in contrast to a prisoner who'd been involved in an arts program. And she said, art allows you to think differently, so you behave differently, so you get different results. To me, that's the definition of rehabilitation. A study found that ballroom dancing cut dementia by 76%. And there's lots more evidence about the powerful impact of culture on health. In London, 80% of visitors say they come to London because of our culture, and we get 34 million visitors a year, so 80% of them coming for culture is a big deal. In the UK, culture generates $17 billion for the UK economy. But fundamentally, culture makes life worth living. Again, as Picasso said, art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. But take a moment to imagine a world without culture. Your iPod is blank. There's nothing on at the cinema. The theatres are empty. Or as the artist Grayson Perry so eloquently puts it, life without art would be a series of emails. But take a step further and imagine a world without creativity, without the imagination or the invention. Without imagination, there'd be no television, no aeroplanes, no medicine, no internet. So, if culture solves crime, it makes you smart, it keeps you healthy, it boosts the economy, it heals communities, it gives you a competitive advantage, and it makes life worth living. If you want to be a successful city in the 21st century, you can't do it without creativity. We need creativity to have a better status in cities. But I accept that this is not the comfort zone for government. And as Matisse said, creativity takes courage. It takes courage for government to let go of some control and not to overplan. We need artists to continue to breathe life into our cities. We don't want sanitized urban landscapes. We need the courage to ask artists to dream. And as we've seen, in Paris, in Rio, in Bogota, in New York, and in Johannesburg, and in cities all around the world, culture and creativity can be transformational. Because dreams are powerful things. Dreams are essential in cities as well as in life. So while we need a plan, we also need a dream. I wanted to end by reflecting on Martin Luther King's famous speech. Imagine if he had stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, in front of 1 million people, and instead of saying, "I have a dream," he only said, "I have a plan." Where would the civil rights movement be today, and would President Obama be in the White House? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would now like to move to the panel discussion, so can I ask the panelists to please come up on the stage?
So thank you very much. All three presentations it's quite different, but also linking each other, I felt. And also it touches a lot of issues which was presented yesterday and the day before yesterday. Creativity, but I think I should mention a little bit to the audience that what the terminology of the art and creativity, because creativity, it depends on the person who hear that word, you know, the imaginations may be different. In a broader sense, creativity is actually embracing almost all kind of artistic activities, maybe. But maybe to explain about it, we should give some comment or some image about creativity, because it's not just making some object, right? Maybe can you start with Justine? Because you use it very often.
Yes. I mean, I think a good example is actually the Olympic Games. As I said, you know, it is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, which you're all looking forward to for Tokyo in 2020. And I think just opening out the question was the important thing. You know, as you did with the Nuit Blanche, just have the courage and the confidence to take the risk and let go. And allow the artists to see the world in a different way. I heard a quote, someone once said that the mark of true power is the ability to give it away. And I think there's something in there really about being able to let go and take a risk. And what happened after the Olympics, as I would say an intangible legacy, is that because we opened out the possibility of dreaming your best dreams for the Olympics, after that, the ambition of the city, of the citizens, of the artists grew substantially. And so this is not something that you will see in any report about the Olympics, but it's about confidence and ambition. And I think it's then very hard to come back from that. Once you've said to someone, what's your biggest, best creative idea? You can't go back from that. Once you've had it, you can only go forward and think of other great, brilliant ideas. So I think that's a kind of intangible legacy, but I think it takes the courage to let go of it.
Girard.
Yes.
What is creativity? I mean, yeah.
You know, as we, each of us in our way, expressed our view of the place of art in the city, obviously, it's not just to put art outside, you know, at the corner of the street, on a new avenue. No, it's more about using the public space by the citizens. And for instance, whenever we build a tramway or a new way of circulation in a city, it was very obvious when we looked at Bangkok presentation, you know, and the old part of the city, when you mentioned the monks and the barks and the boats and the gardens and so on. You know, we have to think of art being part of this renovation process if there is a meaning, not just put some pieces here and there. But actually, when you, for instance, decide, like we do in Paris, like most cities in the world do, to have the banks of the rivers being used again for people to walk, for people to actually maybe swim, having floating swimming pools, having gardens, having some restaurants, instead of having highways of cars. Then why not make it beautiful and just not make a new way of circulation, but have architects, designers, and artists place art if everything is articulated? So art shouldn't be an excuse to make citizens quiet, or a way to make citizens quiet and just satisfied because there is a little of beauty around the corner from when they live. No. It should be part of a way to design the city. It could be on a small scale, it could be on a large scale. But whenever we decide to open a new public library, to open a new cinema, to have a festival, to have a new park, having a new garden, a new public garden, is part of culture. The list of Justine was extremely wise. Crime is culture. Economy is culture. But culture is not always economy and crime.
To me, the creativity means the possibilities to see different things. Something out there that you haven't seen it, but you will be able to imagine and see the possibilities out there. According to our experience in Bangkok, you see, well, when we talked about London, Paris, it was obvious, developments is a different way. And for some reason, certain groups of citizens or a certain group of people, some of them believe that, well, we are okay just the way they are. Why change? And I often quote, no problem is a problem, When you feel you're so okay with today's, days to days and the way you live, that is a problem because you don't see the possibility out there. You can live better, the better quality of life towards, from cultures and arts. And that could be my questions to Christophe and Justine as well that I would like to learn from your experience. We can't deny, many of people still see art and culture as a decoration, just that, which is sad to know. Or some of them will see that art and culture is a luxury that will be limited or, belong to some certain group. You have to be, you gotta get good education, you gotta get salaries, and then you can enjoy art. Which I strongly believe that art is no decoration, but art is commodity that people need to live in and see the importance in life. I think this is a challenge that we have in many areas, in my cities. How we're going to make them, realize the importance of art and culture. How are we going to overcome the idea that arts and culture is not just the decoration, but is basically the commodity that leads to the better quality of life?
Yes.
Joy Ito gave a speech, talk, about very advanced technology. And he gave a vision that it may change the life and the society of us. And on the other hand, Apinan gave quite interesting examples that people could be creative even in the flood, in this political turmoil. Both are actually creativity. And so also we had a kind of a discussion about whether we should keep old town as it is, or maybe we demolish and make a new town. In both cases, creativity is involved. And then Justine said that, can you plan for creativity? you are all somehow making some policies on creative city or creative economy. What actually can you do? There are so many possibilities. You keep all the things. You don't go to the high technology and just think about pet bottles to float your baby or dogs, you know. On the other hand, you know, the very advanced technology changing fundamental infrastructure of our life. As a policymakers, how you can set the direction?
そうですね。You know, and Ito Sensei's presentation yesterday was extremely interesting because it went to every citizen's daily and detailed life. I think the design of internet objects, for instance, is the first maybe step of the change of our lifestyle. You know, in offices today, in private houses, in households, the way our rooms are designed or organized have changed. Where would you actually go on internet? In your bedroom? In the living room? In the bathroom? In the toilet? I mean, where do you Skype? So all of this has changed completely the way we actually live. And I think in schools, my obsession is that everything should start from school and education. It should start as early as possible for kids to learn the new tools of what Professor Ito yesterday called AI, after internet. Because we actually live in the AI world, and which is a great world if we actually, you know, us, political decision makers, elected people, we have, you know, a design and defined term. We're not there forever. So the time we have responsibility, we should make sure we are listening to the change of society. And in terms of decision, I think new technologies, this new culture, because it's all about culture, should be absolutely happily taken into account. But it starts from school, as early as kindergarten kids. You know, I was impressed. Last summer, we were in transit in Tokyo with my younger kids, and coming from New Caledonia, going back to Paris. And I went to pick up some papers in the lounge. On the plane, I was looking at my iPad, and I realized my kids, 6 and 8, had used my iPad to make pictures of me walking to pick up the papers. So all of these show that today's kids like to use, like to create, and for them, you know, iPads, iPhones, this way of communicating, Skype, is a wonderful way of communicating. So let's put all of this everywhere as possible. This is the duty of political leaders or managers.
Yes. Actually, children are open to the new technology, maybe. Problem is adult, sometimes. Karndee-san, you said that policies should be sometimes from bottom up. And, but if 98% of the population don't know what biotechnology can do, but Joe Ito talked about a lot about biotechnology may change our life. So how can you make a new policy about it without, well, with the citizens who doesn't know anything about it?
Well, thank you for the questions. I believe that is the challenge, the major challenge that we are encountering right now, and we are basically exploring ways to overcome that. When Nanjo said the policy should come from bottom up or top down, well, actually, my answer would say it should not come from exclusive from any side. So basically, it should have the combination of the two. Policymakers should have the right vision that can help, sustainable development, and at the same time, but that vision doesn't have to be specific, or pinpoint, or so rigid. You have some boundary to change, because top of the top, when you come down with the policy, you have a good impact or a positive effect to the citizen. So I would rather say, yes, the vision right on top should be there, but it should be open enough to invite people and the citizen from the bottom up to show their interest, how they want to move our society forward. Because two ways, you might think that if we go from bottom up, we might get a good, the positive effect of being efficient, being effective. Bam, this is what we want to do, and we're going to get things done by 10 years. But honestly, it doesn't work in my country. On the other hand, that does good side of effectiveness and efficiency for many countries, which I really envy those countries. On the other side, if we go on from the bottom up, talking to the citizen, it's very common to think that it's going to take a long time. It's going to be a very exhausting process. But to me, I have to experiment both ways. So I say, yes, we have to meet halfway. And I still strongly believe that in the future, people get more participate in what they are, how they live. So that's the help once again with the information technology. People participate in everything. We have the we have the channel, which is much easier than the past. So yes, I strongly believe that it should come from the both way and align it and tune it to make the execution efficient and effective. I actually have studied some cases which I don't have time to elaborate over the presentation, but I can tell you right now, we have a plan to build, the waterfront areas in Bangkok, which you honestly get whole inspired by Tokyo waterfront, London and everywhere. We want to have that, but now the plan has been done in place for 20 years. It failed terribly. Why? Because we have so much of a good plan, just like Justine said, we have plan, but we never built dreams together. So when you need to deal with the citizens, people from every walks of life, create the common vision, common dreams, happens to be the most important things. And that your question is how, well, it's actually my questions to all of you, like, how are we going to create that vision? Because, well, if you go to Thai context, we, believe it or not, most of them are pretty happy that's the way they are. Although we might see them as, well, you can improve your quality of life, things could be better, but they just go, I'm fine. What are you going to do about it? It's just a hurdle. We are experimenting so many ways, and we're learning at that process.
Anyone wants to respond to that?
Yeah. That's why I believe the necessity for mayors or members of parliament to give back regularly voice to the citizens. We cannot, just organize life like things are decided and this is perfect and the plan is good and we absolutely know how it should be tomorrow, the ideal world with the green everywhere, art everywhere, and no. We have to go back regularly to the citizen's voice. First, because the world is absolutely, in terms of technology and thinking, going rapidly. And yesterday I was struck by this invention of the ADN card game, for instance, you presented. And all of this like non-stop creativity every day. So to make sure that the policies we will apply, you know, we shouldn't be in charge of a government or for ourselves. We should be in charge, if you're elected, for the citizens and for the common sense. And what is more exciting than making your program or your vision, you know, better every month or every year? Because the citizens and those who participate in the thinking, this forum, for instance, is extremely useful for my term. Because what I've been hearing yesterday and the day before and this morning from my colleagues is actually good for me and good to apply in Paris. You know, the time of thinking that there are a few cities who are the best cities in the world is over. You know, it's even a post-colonial attitude, you know, when we mention only 4 or 5 cities in the world as example of what should be, you know, the way to follow. No. What's going on today in Ljubljana, in Santiago de Chile, in Busan, I mean, I won't give a list of cities, but it's extremely interesting because the citizens themselves, people like Justine, people like Karndee in their responsibilities, are shaking up, you know, the way we should run our policies. And we have the responsibility to be totally open and be able to change as long as we inform, as long as we ask, and have all generations being involved. Not just the young generation, not just those who will vote for us in 10 years, but those who are the new generation of elderly. Yes, that their cities we're talking about. I'm finished. I had 1 minute left.
No, I give just one question on the floor, from the floor.
Yes? Doko?
Yeah,
どこですか?
はい。時間
We're almost running out of time, but if there's anyone in the general audience who'd like to pose a question, we can entertain one, just one. Anyone? What a shame. No questions? I think I see a hand way back in the back. I'd like to ask about the London case, if you could talk about London. You said artists are asked to realize their dream, and they go out into the streets to follow or pursue their dreams, but I think they're bound to come up against some maybe legal restrictions, or maybe against some of their ideas may go against good public morals. So there may have been, I think, a battle between these two, the artists versus the laws and perhaps the common sense of the public. So how were you able to overcome this in London?
Sorry, the point of question was the point of the question was the fight between the artists and the public morale, as well as the regulations and policymakers. How were you able to overcome, in your case, in London?
Yes. Well, it's very complicated. In London, in our department, we have begun to champion what we call informal culture. And that is, as I was talking about in my speech, all the informal, vibrant things that happen in the city. We want there to be a freedom and a creativity in the city. And, you know, of course, we don't want bad art, we don't want bad music, we don't want anything that is offensive to people. But often, you know, the regulation doesn't discriminate, and it just closes everything down. And so, to give the example of the live music, the street musicians, we've set up a task force at City Hall called the Busking Task Force, and we are planning to create a simplified system so that everyone who wants to play live music in the streets of London and entertain the public is very clear how they can do it, what the rules are, and it's easy for everyone. At the moment, for example, we have a situation where it's not clear at all. We have people arrested, we have confusing licensing, we have musicians with their instruments taken away. So really, it's about creating the conditions for creativity to flourish in the city.
And also, Christophe, please, because he did Nuit Blanche on street sometimes.
So, but for instance, Berlioz, the musician, what is classical today is not classical when it happens. Painters, designers, musicians are usually revolutionaries, when they create in their time, and they become classical after. So we should leave that space for tomorrow's classical values, if it can reassure those afraid of public disorder. It's like marijuana. Some states in the world make it legal because they think it's good. And some countries like ours, like Japan, like France, makes it illegal. But one day, maybe it will be legal. So graffs, for instance, is obviously recognized as an art today. It was not before. Rap was not before. So we should be able to let those expressing and creating new ways of music or design express themselves. That's why we organize, for instance, for graffitis, public walls. So it's a way to have those graphers who are very talented to be able to express themselves in the city, in the public space. I'm a bit in favor of a little disorder. Otherwise, we become just bourgeois, and this is the end of life.
But Girard, but then you let it go, that if the things crash to the regulation or law.
Well, I usually, for instance, there is an artist in Paris who loves to design on the sidewalk, and another one who designs cats on chimneys of roofs of Paris. So regularly, there are complaints, but it's part of the charm of a city where artists like to go beyond the rules. So I usually go to court to try to help them make a compromise. So we should accept some disorder. I don't think anyone wants a total framed life, It's nice when you have a flower shop and the flowers are not exactly on the spot, they have been given for. It's nice when things just go a little bit further. It's like love, It's not something precise. Let's space to imagination and disorder also. There is a lot of corruption in the world at the highest level. So little artistic corruption, honestly, is acceptable.
大変心強い
Thank you very much for such encouraging comments, very heartening comments from Paris City. Thank you.
Actually, I wanted to ask even to Justine, because Justine-san once said that there are many regulations, older regulations, which is, how can I say, it looks very stupid now. Yeah. Actually, we have similar situations sometimes. And this thing, and also the creativity could be nurtured by the planned policies or not. These kind of things are actually linked somehow in the roots. But now, I would like to continue this kind of discussion, but the time is over. So I'd like to end this session. Thank you very much. And yeah, I will see you in the afternoon again.
Nanjo 館長どうもありがとうございました。クリストフ様。
Thank you very much, Mr. Nanjo, Director Nanjo. Could we have another round of applause for Mr. Girard, Leopairote, Ms. Simons, and Mr. Nanjo, the director, the moderator.